Let's make pandesal. Pandesal is a popular Filipino bread. It's usually eaten in the mornings, and people like to dip it in their coffee or hot chocolate, or they eat it with butter, or they eat it with other tasty fillings, which I'll show you at the end of the video. Here are the ingredients we'll need. In our mixing bowl, let's go ahead and put 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Then add 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, a 1/3 cup of sugar, and I like to go ahead and mix it a little bit now because they say the yeast is not supposed to make direct contact with salt, otherwise it will kill the yeast. There we go. So after the ingredients have been mixed a little bit, we can go ahead and add some salt. This is 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Then we'll add 2 eggs, which we will beat lightly. Then add 1 cup of milk that's been warmed to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm milk is important because it will activate the yeast. If it's not warm enough, the yeast will not be activated. If it's too hot, the yeast might get killed. So what I like to do is warm it up in the microwave for about 30 seconds. Then check the temperature with a cooking thermometer. I'm gonna go ahead and add it in here, but I'm going to leave a splash at the bottom of the cup. You'll see that when we mix, we might not need all of it. We just need enough to get all of the flour from the bottom of the bowl. So we'll have this in case we need it. Then I add 1/3 cup of condensed milk and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Then I'm gonna go ahead and attach my dough hook onto my stand mixer. But it's okay if you don't have a stand mixer. You can knead everything by hand, which I do sometimes as well. I still see some flour at the bottom of the bowl here, so I'm gonna add a little bit more milk. I ended up using the entire cup of milk. Now I'm going to add the butter. This is 3 tablespoons of softened butter. I'm going to add it a little bit at a time. Okay, so all of the butter has been incorporated. This is kind of what they call a shaggy dough. We need to knead it some more until it's smooth and elastic. In the stand mixer, it can take up to 5 to 7 minutes. If you're doing it by hand, it can take 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll show you how to know when it's done. Now you know when the bread is ready when it's smooth and elastic. You can also test it by doing the window pane test. That means when you pull the dough, it should be able to stretch far enough to where you can see light almost like a window pane without it ripping. So do you see how I am pulling the bread here? And there are some holes that are ripping through, so that means it still needs to knead a little bit more, but we are almost there. You can also do the window pane test by taking off a piece, rolling it into a ball, and then pulling it and stretching it that way. Let's see if it works with a smaller piece here. You know, some might say that this is already passing the window pane test. The fact that you can stretch it out this thin is pretty good. That means that everything has been developed. So now I'm going to take it off of the dough hook. So roll it into a nice ball. You see it's nice and smooth. Don't worry if you don't get making bread right the first time. It took me a couple tries, okay? And even now, if I don't bake bread for a while, I get it wrong sometimes because I forget how long it takes for me to knead it. Now I'm going to take some oil and put it around my bowl. And then we're going to put this dough back in here with the oil. Make sure to kind of roll it around in the oil. And that is because we're going to let the dough rise and the oil will keep it from sticking to the bowl. So this is what our dough looks like right now. You can see the oil is all over it. That's going to keep it from sticking to the bowl. Now I'm going to cover the bowl with plastic wrap. We need to let the dough rise and it needs to have all the gases trapped in there with it. Now, depending on where you live and what time of year it is, the temperature in your house, the time it takes for the dough to rise will vary. In the summertime, when it's warm outside here in North Carolina, my dough can rise in 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. But I've noticed that in the cooler weather, like in fall and winter, it's been taking about 1 to 2 hours for it to rise. You want it to double in size. So we will check on this later. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours. Let's go ahead and check on our dough. This is what the dough looks like now. You can see that it's risen. It's hard to tell from this angle, but it's about double in size. Now this is the fun part. We have to release the air, so we just go like this. Then we'll take it out and roll it. All right, let me show you how to form the pandesal. We're just going to take out the dough on a board. I like to make it into a log and then cut it into pieces from there. So first I cut it in half, and then I cut that piece in half, and then I cut each of these pieces into thirds. And then we will even everything out afterwards. Okay, I ended up dividing the dough into 15 equal pieces. If you have a scale, you are welcome to weigh them, but I just eyeball it. Now let me show you how I roll them. Okay, so this is about the size of my pandesal. What we're going to do is just roll it into a smooth ball. That means pulling the edges down and over. See how it's smooth at the top, and then at the bottom, just bring it all together and then roll it. People like to also roll it on the board itself. See how smooth it is? I'll show you again. So just take a piece of dough, bring the edges down. See, it's smooth on the top. On the bottom, it's going to look like this. So let's just twist it together and roll it. Again, you can roll it on the board itself. There we go. Now, I will say, if you want to put a filling in your pandesal, which I often do, like you can put corned beef or hot dog, now is the time to do it. All you would do is roll out your dough, make it flat, and then you would put the hot dog or filling right here. Then you would close your dough over it and then roll it up like that. So that's if you wanted to have a filling, but mine today are just going to be plain. I actually made hot dog pandesal the other day. This is the same pandesal recipe, but inside I put a hot dog. You can even put cheese or corned beef or whatever you like. It's such a nice and tasty treat. Here are some fun facts about pandesal. It comes from the Spanish culture. Spain colonized the Philippines for over 300 years, from 1565 to 1898. And there's a lot of Spanish influence in the Filipino culture, like in the language, traditions, and of course cuisine. Literally, pandesal in Spanish means salty bread, and perhaps the original Spanish pandesal was salty. But over time, Filipinos changed the recipe to the light and sweet bread that it is today. In the Philippines, pandesal is sold at bakeries all around neighborhoods. Some people have bakeries on the first floor of their house. And the prices of pandesal can range from 1 piso for a small pandesal to a few pesos each, depending on their size. And there we go, that's our last dough ball. So now what we're going to do is roll each pandesal in some breadcrumbs. And then we're going to put it on a baking sheet. Again, just take a pandesal, roll it in some breadcrumbs, and then place it on a baking sheet. There are many types of variations of pandesal, like ube pandesal with cheese, which has a deep purple color and a melty cheese inside. Also, there's pan de coco with a sweet coconut filling inside, and so many more. And there we go. They've been covered in breadcrumbs, and now we're actually going to let it rise one more time. That means we're going to let it sit for about 45 minutes to 1 hour, and hopefully they will have grown in size. So this time I'm going to cover it with a towel. You could use plastic wrap like earlier, but a towel works just fine. We'll check on it again in about 45 minutes to 1 hour, and hopefully they will have grown in size. Okay, after about 1 hour, this is what the pandesal will look like. Now let's go ahead and put it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 18 to 20 minutes. You know it's done when the bread has puffed up and it's golden brown on the top. Let's try our pandesal. The perfect pandesal is crusty on the outside and light and fluffy on the inside. I love the subtle sweetness from the condensed milk and vanilla extract that we added. Let me show you some of my favorite ways to eat pandesal. I like dipping it in hot chocolate. Or in the Philippines, it would be Milo. I like going classic and just adding a little bit of butter. For a yummy breakfast sandwich, I like adding Spam sometimes. You can even add a fried egg or hot dog. And have you ever tried this? Adding pancit to your pandesal. You should give it a try. I think my favorite way to eat it is plain when it's fresh out of the oven. What about you? What's your favorite way to eat pandesal? Tell me in the comments. Paalam!